everyone. This is Data-Driven Formula One with Patrick and Ganna and Patrick. Hi, how are you?
Hello, Ganna. Hello, all. It's nice to be back from our a little bit longer winter break.
Yeah, that's right. It's mostly because of me, as usual, with my schedule.
Yeah, but also I have been on holidays away from connections to the internet, so there have been various factors.
Okay. So did you go to Mexico?
Exactly. I've been in the south of Mexico, so very far away from everything related to Formula One.
All right. So today we're back and we're discussing the latest film, right? Ferrari.
Exactly. Well, we will speak about the actual Ferrari movie. Well, in fact, we will not directly speak about the movie, but give you some additional information, additional points to consider. And also, as we are data-driven Formula One, we want to align it how the story of the movie aligns to Formula One. The Ferrari movie, in short, is about the year 1957, because there had been two different situations for Enzo Ferrari. First of all, the fatal accident at the last Mille Miglia, which we indeed discussed about our special episode about Enzo Ferrari. And second, it is 1 year after his son Dino died, and now in 1957, it became public that he had practically a parallel wife and different son, Piero Ferrari. And that's practically where the movie focuses on. So it's not only about racing business, but also the human aspect. And based on this human aspect, it's not only about Enzo Ferrari, but also strongly shows his wife, Laura, where normally we never had much information about. So it's an interesting, great movie, great critics, and not just for hardcore nerds, but also for everybody interesting, I think.
Yeah, and it's good that they decided not to do the whole life, because I think that's when it becomes really, like, first I think difficult to portray, and second not so interesting, because if like you know, sometimes the biopics they just try to capture the whole life, like from childhood to death, and it's I think then you cannot do much character development because you need to tell the story, and it's good that they did that. I mean, I only like I just want to say I really love Adam Driver. I think that he's like wonderful in everything, but I still like think that that's not quite his part. You know, like I think he did a great job, but you know, if you look at Penelope Cruz in this film, I think it's a very powerful performance. So for me, I think if I could have a pick, like who would play Enzo Ferrari, probably would pick Daniel Day-Lewis. You know, and but you know, I'm not saying that Adam Driver is bad. Like he did, like I said, he did a good job. But I think he's still a bit like maybe a bit young for this. You know, like just you can tell that he's like a much younger person playing, you know, Enzo Ferrari quite late in his life. So that's my only sort of reservation about this film. But I think they probably have chosen him off the back of his success with Gucci, and because he's already been in, you know, portraying iconic Italians. So I think, it's probably why.
Yes, and as you may know, he wasn't the first choice.
I didn't know that. I wanted to ask you because I did. I kind of when I did a bit of research, it like I didn't come up with anything. So who was the first choice?
Oh yeah, I just forgot the name. Who was the first choice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's okay. Oh.
Yeah. I mean, you can easily Google it.
Yeah, I'll try to find out while you maybe talk about the reviews.
Great. So I can talk a little bit. And I agree with you. And also considering most critics underline that the best performance is by Penelope Cruz, and so it's quite expected that that she will get a nomination for this year's Oscar based on this role. Even though also Adam Driver did, I think, a good performance, and interesting. Already his second role related an Italian family after the House of Gucci.
Oh, Christian Bale was the first choice. Yeah,
Yes,
I think that would have been also a good choice. I'm wondering what would
Christian Bale, right?
Be like.
But Christian Bale, I mean, he had his role also in Ford against versus Ferrari, so he did also his racing movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting, as you mentioned, the movie is a biopic as it became more popular these years, and luckily it's just a focus on 1 year, so it avoids a little bit the problem which we may had with Napoleon, which shows practically from his youth to his death, and as many pointed out, the film is maybe a little bit lacking the deeps of his biography. Maybe we will still see this, as there should be, I think, a 5-hour version on Apple Plus. So maybe there we see a little bit more. But if you have a movie and want to stay in a range between 2 and 2.5 hours, I think it's better to focus on one aspect which represents then the whole person. So the movie is not only a biopic, but it's based directly on a book, on the biography by Brooke Yates, Enzo Ferrari, The Man and the Machine. I haven't read this book. I read a different biography, so I put this on my wish list on Amazon. If somebody wants to see it, can see there my wish list. I put it there, and hopefully we'll have time later this year to read this book too.
Yeah, and some people also, like from the different blogs that I read, they also are citing Ferrari Rex. Ferrari Rex. I don't know whether you came across that book, but it's apparently it never was translated into English, so it's just the Italian text. So that is also very interesting. I thought that might be a good book to read as well. So we'll put a link to that one as well under the video, so you guys can check it out. And I just wanted to remind everyone, if you're wondering like why we're not kind of looking at any footage, is because this is meant to be a podcast, and so you just have some additional slides with us if you're watching us on YouTube, and we are only sharing the materials that we can legally share. So
that's correct.
Ethical podcast, and we always try to encourage you to read more and to go to museums and check out the what you can find out from other sources, not just from us.
And I mean, honestly, Ferrari, it's quite easy. There are a lot of books, different biographies, and there are the 2 museums, which in deep talked about in the Enzo Ferrari episode. By the way, actually, I think this book is not in print anymore, but I've checked. You can find used versions also for a good price still on Amazon. So if you're interested directly in this book, you can still find it in Amazon and hopefully also in other places.
Well, hopefully they will print some more, because obviously the film is based on it, and I guess people would want to buy it after watching the film.
Yeah, that would be Good. So who produced the movie? And that is also interesting because Michael Mann, he did famously Heat. He was born February 5 in Chicago, Illinois. He was executive producer of Miami Vice from 1984 1989. For you outside who have seen this series, which was, of course, iconic in the 80s, besides the two inspectors, there have been prominently featured two Ferraris. First, the Ferrari Daytona Spider, and then the white Ferrari Testarossa Cabrio. There's also an interesting backstory, as originally they used for the first season a replica of the Daytona, but this was a non-official replica, so Ferrari wanted to sue the production company that they're not allowed to use a Ferrari replica. So that's why I think in the beginning of the second season, the car exploded, and then Sonny and Crockett had this nice white Ferrari Testarossa Cabrio, which wasn't officially done by Ferrari. They hadn't the Cabrio out yet, but nevertheless, this was okay. Besides this, Mann did The Last of the Mohicans. I think maybe his best movie. He did already a biopic in 2001 with Muhammad Ali, and then other action movies like Collateral. Besides this, he's quite a petrolhead. He did advertising for Mercedes-Benz and also supported with the promotion of the Ferrari California. Also, thanks to his success, he's a collector of exclusive cars, of course, including a Ferrari 599 GTO. As you see on the right, this is his car, black with gold, and also he has a Testarossa.
Well, I mean, that's not surprising. I guess you would have to have some interest in the subject in order to do a movie on this.
Exactly. I mean, yeah. We see this also with some of the actors. So this is the guy who did the movie. Speaking a little bit about the cast, we see here well-known names. I mean, drivers. We see Peter Collins, Piero Taruffi, Sterling Moss, Olivier Gendebien, Mike Hawthorn, Wolfgang von Trips, Jean Berra, and Eugenio Castellotti. The last one, we only see them practically driving in their cars. So these people have been characterized by drivers because we do not see them in acting. But of course, you see Jack O'Neill, Patrick Dempsey, and others, and we will come back to them. As I said, we want to align the story of the movie, which was more on sports car racing with Formula One. Main actors, we already discussed it, Adam Driver, even if maybe still most famously is known for his role in Star Wars. He already earned 2 Academy Awards nominations. Maybe we get a third one for this movie, we will see. And Penelope Cruz, who already has the Oscar, and I would strongly assume she will get at least a nomination for this one too.
Yeah. I mean, it would be good if she actually gets an award. I think it was a very strong performance. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. So Enzo Ferrari, and here I have a photo with him and his son. This photo was taken in 1947. We did a quite extended special edition version of our podcast only about Enzo Ferrari. So we will not speak about him. So just to keep the base, of course, he was the founder of Ferrari, first as a works team for Alfa Romeo. Then he became independent and had his own cars, which he also managed as a racing team. He was widely known as Il Commendatore, Il Drake, Il Drake, or later also in a very respectful way mentioned as Il Ingegnere, the engineer, or the big old man, Il Grande Vecchio. Again, in Italian language, this are a very respectful way to address somebody. He had a long life from February 1889 to August 1988. Of course, Italian, and practically rarely left the country or even his region. With this, we coming to the driver, which is quite in the focus of the movie, tragically, because he was involved in the accident where not only he and the co-driver died, but also a number of spectators, including children, which was very prominently featured in international and the Italian press, where, for example, the Vatican press addressed Enzo Ferrari as the god Saturn, who was eating his children, which had a quite strong impact on Enzo Ferrari. Also, as it was only 1 year where his own son died. So who was Alfonso de Portago, or full name? Alfonso Antonio Vincente Eduardo Angel Blas Francisco de Bora Cabeza de Baca y Leighton, 11th Marquess of Portago. If you follow our podcast from the beginning, from the 1950s, we may have mentioned that especially in 1950s, still 1960s, we had a lot of gentleman drivers with some with high skills, some with less skills, who had the money to buy their own cars, buy their way into motorsports, and a lot had been from a noble background, which also includes Alfonso de Portago, who had a noble background, but also had the required skills.
Yeah, and also when we talked about 1950s, and you can find the episodes, we explained that a lot of racing was not properly done in a sense of security, because a lot of races were street races, and therefore you could not really protect the spectators, especially. So whereas now we have a pretty good safeguards for the audience who are properly separated from the track. It used to be that you were basically standing practically on the track. So if something happened, that endangered not only the drivers, but also the people who were watching the race.
That's correct. And practically also the street races, the big era ended exactly in the year 1957 with this big accident. Also important in these times, there wasn't this big division between sports car racing and Formula One. Today we see that Formula One drivers practically only drive Formula One, and sports car racers practically only sports car racing. So in this time, for example, in Ferrari, there had been a number of pilots, and so choose the best one, which focused on Formula One, and the one maybe with a little bit lesser skills, they focused on street car racing. And from time to time, maybe 1 or 2 races, they could also participate in Formula One, which was also the case for Alfonso de Portago, who only had 5 entries. This because mostly he was only invited maybe to the Italian race, the Spanish race, where Ferrari wanted to include 1 car more. So he wasn't a regular driver in Formula One. So we see here, when he participated with the legendary Ferrari D50, the former Lancia development, the same car which supported Fangio to become the world champion.
Yes, and when we discussed the 1950s, you can actually find that those episodes that we've done, especially from 1956, 57, and 58, and there is quite a detailed discussion around the make of the car and the wings that we have. That is also quite interesting, and the history of how they were developed.
Yeah, really.
And that has to do with all the financial problems that also discussed in the film. Yeah.
Exactly. Not only with Ferrari, but in this case with Lancia,
Mm-hmm.
who originally developed this car and but sold it to Ferrari, to the financial problems, and second to the fatal accident of their championship driver Alberto Ascari. Aligning it with the movie, Alfonso de Portago will be played by a Brazilian actor and also musician, Gabriel Leone. Interesting for motorsports fans, he also should play later in a biopic about Ayrton Senna, which Netflix is planning to create. Of course, also something we're looking forward to. Another fun fact, Alfonso de Portago's life inspired the author Erich Maria Remarque for his 1961 book, Heaven Has No Favorites. Remarque, a very famous author, not directly for this book, but his most well-known Nothing New on the Western Front, which just last year got a new remake on Netflix, which also got the Oscar. So very famous author. So Alfonso de Portago inspired him, but this book is completely not about him. For whatever reason, just his life and maybe his death inspired the author to a book which is about something completely different. But then later, this book, Heaven Has No Favorites, which originally is about a sports car driver like Portago, had been realized into a movie in the late 70s called Bobby Deerfield, where then they changed the setting from sports car racing again to the 1976 Formula One season, where Al Pacino played a Formula One driver.
Yes, and again, we encourage you to watch the film. Al Pacino is always great to watch, but yeah, it's also a great script.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting movie as it deals a little bit about how Formula One drivers perceive life and death, how they may have an illusion of being in control when they are sitting inside the car, and these topics which we various times also addressed in our episode.
Yeah, that's right, and that's what Ayrton Senna believed in, because he believed that he cannot be hurt when he was inside the car until his first accident.
Exactly. And something we will see also in the movie is the famous or infamous better Il Bacio della Morte. Is Portago kissing before the start of the race his girlfriend Linda Christian. And some hours later, he will be already dead. That's why Il Bacio della Morte, the kiss of death. Linda Christian, originally known as Blanca Rosa Henriette Stella Welter Forra, was a prominent Mexican actress. She was the very first Bond girl. So now you may say, Bond girl can't be, never heard about it. This because before the Bond movies, there was a Bond TV movie about the movie Casino, based on the book Casino Royale. So yes, even if it was never a movie, just on TV, practically she was the very first Bond girl. As I've said, one of the focuses of the movie is his Enzo Ferrari's relation with Lina Lardi.
Mm-hmm.
with whom they had their son Piero Ferrari, which became publicly known in 1957, even though Enzo Ferrari only adopted Piero as a son after his wife died in 1978. This, as you know, Italy, especially at these times, was a quite conservative Catholic country.
Well, but even elsewhere, I think being divorced was not actually encouraged, let's just say.
No,
Elsewhere, I don't think it was just in Italy. Yeah.
right. Not an Italian, only an Italian point, but let's say in
Yeah.
Italy at the time, the church still had a stronger input. Again, the same year as it was public, the Catholic press went strongly against Enzo Ferrari with the comparison him and the god Saturn. So maybe this somehow how had been related.
Yeah, and I just know because my great grandmother, she got divorced in 1962, and she was like telling me how that wasn't easy. So now it's like, you know, people don't even need to get married anymore, but like, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's okay, and that's not frowned upon. But previously, yeah, being kind of married and then getting a divorce was a big deal.
Yeah, that's right. I assume it was still all over the world in the 1970s. So I can't
Yeah.
imagine a country where it was easy at that time. And I mean, in most places, it's still difficult today.
Yeah.
With this,
Piero
yeah,
Taruffi. We talked about Piero Taruffi in great detail already. Again, we
yes.
would encourage you to look for the specials. Obviously, the special about Enzo Ferrari and our episodes about 1950s, where we discussed him in great detail. Yeah.
Exactly, and we discuss him also in great detail in another episode, and I will come to this later. So Taruffi was he was a very talented driver. He wasn't part of the few who focus on Formula One, and I think this was less because of the talent, but more related to his age. His nickname was Silver Fox because of his gray hair, which also showed he was born 1906, so already a little bit over the age to drive in Formula One when they started in 1950.
Yeah, but again, like we discussed with Patrick, kind of
Yeah,
the age at that point was not that much of a problem. I think it kind of became a problem, I guess, further down the line when currently the drivers get younger and younger. And yeah, it used to be that people with, you know, with some significant fortune and with experience would, you know, buy cars and race those cars. So it was I mean, Piero Taruffi is a driver from before we had teams, like formal teams,
yeah,
when you know the cars belong to the team. So back in the day, the cars belonged to the people who drove them in races. So, and he's exactly from that tradition.
yeah. Interesting and somehow ironically, his only victory in Formula One was in 1958, the year we will also speak a little bit more in detail later today. And this was the last Swiss Grand Prix, because after this, the Swiss population, citizens decided not to have any more car races. This based on the fatal accident in Le Mans with where the Mercedes Silver Arrow flew into the spectators. After as you will see in the movie, or maybe you already saw it in the movie, Portago had the fatal accident, but nevertheless, Pio Taruffi finished the race and won the race. After this, he reflected on all the situation in motorsports and wrote a quite a well-perceived article in the Saturday Evening Post about the safety situation around the races. And this was called Stop Us Before We Will Kill Again. Besides this, also he authored books like The Technique of Motor Racing, this in 1959. And we discussed Piero Taruffi, especially in our episode about strange race cars.
Yeah, weird designs of
weird designs, and this is his patent, which you find all the information in Google Patents. So quite an interesting concept, as you see in the graphic. Again, we discussed it in detail in one of our earlier episodes, which reminded me to the famous pod car racer. So we again, after Adam Driver, another relation to Star Wars. And also it reminded me to the chariot races where we had the horses and then the car. And maybe also this way of thinking also has been expressed by Enzo Ferrari, who once said, horses pull the carriage, they don't push it. And here he was referring to the change in that the motor switches from the front of the car to the back of the car, where Ferrari was very resistant and unfortunately made the switch maybe 1 year too late.
Yeah, that's right, and we discussed this change because so Ferrari even had a car with 2 engines at one point because Enzo Ferrari was not sort of convinced about aerodynamics at all, so he really believed that engine does it all, and so there were some really interesting design choices for Ferrari which didn't pay off at all, so eventually they had to kind of accept the common understanding. And this is how we have the modern cars today.
This particular bimotore was a little bit earlier, still as he was working at Alfa Romeo, but as you said, also here, the German computers started with aerodynamics, and based on his attitude, but maybe also based on his limited budget, they couldn't invest much in aerodynamics, or not wanted to invest much. Instead, they put a second engine into the car, which already existed. A car which you can see today at the Alfa Romeo Museum. Piero Taruffi will be played by the US actor Patrick Dempsey, best known for his role in Grey's Anatomy. Also, he is a car collector. He has won Ferrari Daytona. Also, he participated in Le Mans. In 2013, he reached the 28th position, starting with a Porsche 911 GT3 RSR, so one of the slower cars, but nevertheless still a quite very fast car. Also, he narrated the 2023 documentary Racing with Giants Porsche at Le Mans. And this, I think, 43 minutes documentary, you can see legally on YouTube. Besides this, a fun fact, I think Dempsey was voted last year here in the US as the sexiest man alive, or sexiest actor alive, or something like that.
Sexiest man alive, but I think they don't really differentiate between actors versus not actors, but yeah.
I think they're practically always actors. If I
Yeah, I mean, I think at one point there was even like a movie character that did not exist. That was quite funny. I forget which year it was, and yeah. Anyway, but definitely.
okay, okay, Laura Ferrari. Normally a person where we never had much information about, so it was important for Michael Mann and also, of course, for Penelope Cruz to character her a more three-dimensional, as normally in the text you find about her. She was described practically as a crazy woman, as the patron and Enzo Ferrari as the victim. So it was important for Michael Mann that she has a more three-dimensional role in his movie, also to change a little bit the impression which she normally had about her, and which I think also is a sign of the times, as we maybe similar to the Priscilla movie which we had last year. There's very few known about her, really. We know that they met Enzo and Laura in the beginning of 1920s, most probably 1921. Then 2 years later, they got married. She had shares in the Ferrari company. She had been there actively in the general management, having an eye on the finances and on the processes. And including that, she bought once her wedding gift to help financing the company. Mostly we think to know her due to her involvement in the 96 great walkout, which we also discussed in our Ferrari episode. What was it about? Shortly resumed, a number of leading Ferrari managers had been unhappy that Laura was so strongly involved in the company, and maybe not have been they've been not agreeing with her decisions. And there was one ultimatum that Laura leaves the company or we go, and then Enzo Ferrari correctly decided Laura stays, you go. And a number of people had to go, including the engineers Giotto Bessarini and Carlo Chitti, and the Scuderia Ferrari team manager Tavoni. Interesting for us, Formula One. This led to the Formula One team of RTS or RTS, which was founded by this Carlo Chitti. And also Carlo Chitti motivated the Formula One drivers Phil Hill and Giancarlo Baghetti to leave 1 year later and go to RTS, because they also hadn't been happy anymore in the situation at Ferrari after these leading managers left. So this big walkout, which was somehow a little bit triggered by Laura Ferrari, maybe her attitude, the way she communicated directly. She seems to be a very practical, direct person. And of course, not always well perceived by the managers. You may argue that, again, in this time, it was not very usual for male managers to get orders by females. This was another cultural clash back in time. Anyway, it had also an influence on Formula One, as Phil Hill and Giancarlo Baghetti, practically after they left Ferrari, also destroyed their careers.
Yeah, and well, this again, we talked about the walkout in the episode for 1961, and yeah, in terms of the portrayal in the film, you can see that it was kind of part of Laura Ferrari's wedding money. And as you know, if you watched Godfather or something like that, you understand that you get quite significant amount of cash. Or anyway, back in the day, you would get quite significant amount of cash if you when you were getting married in Italy. And yeah, look, you can then understand that. The whole situation in 1961 was also because there were constantly these ups and downs with the profit. And, you know, one year you have good year, next year you have not a very good year. And like financially, it's very difficult, I guess, for the family to keep afloat. And yeah, I mean, you can then understand why all these controversies happened, because, you know, she was sort of thinking how to cut cost, and no, that's not necessarily always a good idea for the business, where you are kind of in this endurance race, right? So it's you will have bad years and then you will have good years, but you need to persevere at it, cannot do it regularly. Change the designs, and eventually you will get a good car. But yeah, it's just not everyone is built to wait for a good result, you know, for several years.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, with this, as we are data driven, also to present you some numbers. Again, the movie focuses on 1957. Here we had this year Juan Manuel Fangio, who just changed from Ferrari to Maserati. Last year, 56, he won on the Ferrari D50. And now 57, also as due to his character, he was maybe not a perfect switch to work together with Enzo Ferrari. He switched to Maserati and won again the championship. 1957, we hadn't had yet manufacturers championship, which we all was only implemented in 58. Here the results for the Ferrari drivers: Luigi Musso, third position; Mike Hawthorn ended the championship on fourth, then ninth Peter Collins, and then we see the drivers who had been invited in some of the races to participate, but not participated the whole year. Maurice Trinchina, 13th, Wolfgang von Chips, 14th, Alfonso de Portago, 21st, and Jose Froilan Gonzalez, who reached the first victory for the Ferrari team years ago on the 22nd position. Later, we would see again a Ferrari driver as the champion, Mike Hawthorn, and the other drivers, Peter Collins, Luigi Musso, Phil Hill. And we will discuss this a little bit more on detail, because what happened in 1958 practically could be also the stuff for a complete movie.
Yeah, that's right. And so we were talking about the sort of the fact that there were now two British drivers and one Italian driver, and it was very difficult for Luigi Musso to sort of fit in that team, because they were constantly sort of making comments and, you know, kind of putting him at a disadvantage. And yeah,
exactly.
That led then to the whole kind of situation, and the whole situation with safety also led to two subsequent tragic events. So first with Luigi Musso, and then obviously with Peter Collins, that we again already discussed previously when we talked about Michael Thornton and when we talked about Enzo Ferrari.
Exactly. So if there would be a movie, the title could be The Tragedy of Musso, Collins, and Hawthorn, as all of these three men had been dead soon after. So who had been these people? Luigi Musso, as you already said, Italian driver, born 1924, Rome, Italy, and died at the French Grand Prix in 1958. And as you mentioned, we had these three drivers, which have been practically the drivers selected to drive focus on Formula One. Luigi Musso, Mike Hawthorn, and Peter Collins. Quite naturally, the two British drivers, Hawthorn and Peter Collins, bundled quite good. They had a really strong friendship, and also that a gentleman's agreement that they always would split the money for victories, which was quite important because back at the time, the basic salary was relatively lower. But so that's why the money you earn winning or having good results at Grand Prix, which you directly received, had been quite important.
Yeah.
So they had agreement and similar to an insurance.
Yeah, and I just also wanted to say that Michael Hawthorn, he was obviously very, very well supported by his family. So he's coming from a family that is quite well to do. But Luigi Musso, he was in debt and was quite struggling, like financially, when he started with Ferrari. And so, yeah, that was like really not a very good situation within the team because of this financial arrangement, and it really impacted on the climate inside the team because of these constant disagreements over money.
Yeah, and Luigi Musso's girlfriend at that time, Fiamma Bresci, made it public that Musso had the financial debts, which you mentioned, and she also interpreted his debt to this not so positive atmosphere, this toxic atmosphere inside the team. Luigi Musso maybe accepted too much risks and drove too risky. So practically what she said is that Mike Hawthorn and Peter Collins, due to their behavior towards Luigi Musso, practically triggered his fatal accident. Which, of course, you can align with psychology that if you are in a stressful situation, your decision making gets strongly affected, and so she may or may not have a valid point here. Nevertheless, Luigi Musso, he had been quite some time in Formula One, started in 1953 with Maserati, and then also shortly drove the Lancia D50 in 56. Then the same for 1957, and in 1958 he drove the Ferrari 246, where he got 12 points in the first Grand Prix until he had his tragic fatal accident. We see here a photo of him from the same year, 1958, at the Cinquecento Miglia di Monza, also something which we discussed in one of our special episodes, in the episode about Monza, because there had been 2 years where they tried to copy the Indianapolis 500 in Monza to have Formula One cars compete against Indy cars on a kind of oval which existed at that time in Monza. I have to relevate this a little bit. It hadn't been exact Formula One cars, but Formula One cars had been the base, and the manufacturers as Ferrari adapted them to the Indianapolis reglement. So it had been cars which looked more or less similar to Formula One, at least for the European manufacturers, but they had been strongly changed. Sorry, as you can hear, I'm still have a little bit of cold.
Yeah, Peter Collins, we discussed him quite again quite in great detail, and so again, this was the second. I just also wanted to mention before we maybe move to Peter Collins. Let's maybe talk about Peter first, and then I'll come back to this point later. So Peter, obviously Peter Collins again was a British driver. He again started quite early in 1949. And then so his career in Ferrari also was very good, even though like he probably was not as successful as Michael Hawthorn, but definitely was a good co-pilot. And like Patrick said, they basically created this unhealthy environment for Luigi Musso together, because they were constantly sort of jointly sharing cash and just creating like financial disputes.
Yes, and here we see also a little bit the cars he drove. He started 52 with the HWM, then the Vanwall Special, the British car, then Maserati, and since 56 he had been at Ferrari, first starting with the 555 and then the 50, which he also drove in the next year together with the new 801, and then the Ferrari 246, same as Luigi Musso. Interesting to mention, he was the first British driver at Ferrari, and he was very well welcomed by Enzo. Also, as he somehow reminds him to his son Dino. That's why in the beginning Enzo had quite an emotional, positive relation to Peter Collins. And for example, here we see Dino in one of these cars.
But generally Peter Collins was very kind of this quite easygoing person, and so like when you read about him and when you see some of the footage, you can tell that he was very well liked. He was very good looking, just more of like atypical stars of Formula One that we get these days. So he was quite different from kind of more of older gentleman-like drivers that we had back in the day. And so I think that's probably why he also is liked by Enzo Ferrari.
Yeah, and also due to his behavior, he earned the respect by Enzo Ferrari, which we discussed in detail in our episode 1956. Collins had good opportunities to become the first British Formula One world champion, but he was in the same team of Fangio, who was the leader at Ferrari. And as the Fangio's car had became technical problems, Fangio went to the pits, and Collins received signals from the Ferrari crew to come in too, to hand over the car to Fangio. And this was still allowed and a good practice back in time, that if the leader of a team has a problem, somebody else comes in to hand over his car so that the number one driver could continue racing and earn important points. And Collins complied with this request without hesitation. And due to this, Fangio became world champion. If Collins would not have done this, if he would have ignored it, which he could have done, most likely Collins had become world champion in 1956. Maybe he wouldn't be in Ferrari in 1957 because of this ignorance. but he, as a champion, he would had all doors open at the other teams. And due to this, of course, he earned the respect by Fangzhou and also by Enzo Ferrari. There is one quote. He was asked later in an interview if it was difficult for him to give his car to Fangzhou, and he said, "No, something like I'm still young. I will become world champion another year," which tragically he never became. Nevertheless, his situation in the Ferrari team lost a little bit his position based maybe on his behavior, at least as we can find in the information today. Again, we are speaking about the end of 1950s. So we are dependent on the information which was created, which was published, and to which we have access. So due to this, we can say that he was dismissed by Enzo Ferrari for damaging the clutch of his car at the 1958 24 hours of Le Mans. He was accused of that he did this on purpose because it was heavily raining at the race, and the Enzo Ferrari and the team had the impression that Collins didn't like driving in the rain, and for this purposely destroying the clutch. So, also because shortly after, as the race was still on, he was already found in a British pub drinking. So not, of course, something which Enzo Ferrari and the team could not tolerate. So he was depromoted. He not could start anymore in a Formula One car, but had to start with a car based on Formula Two regulations. And with this, of course, couldn't fight about victories. As mentioned, Mike Hawthorn had been his friend, and Hawthorn had a very strong position inside the Ferrari team. So Hawthorn went in Italy to Enzo's office and told him practically, Peter will get a Formula One car again, or I'm leaving the company. Due to this, Enzo Ferrari gave the Formula One car back to him.
Yeah, and well, that's basically also. I mean, the whole firing situation was not just because of the incident in Le Mans, but also because of what we talked about, that the climate wasn't right, and the Enzo Ferrari really wanted to change that. So he did try to change that by firing Peter Collins, but then because obviously. Michael Thornton was a big asset to the team. He had to hire him back.
Yeah, and also already shortly before, directly after Musso's death, Ferrari needed a top driver, so he also had a strong position. He had a very good performance at the British Grand Prix in Silverstone. Despite that his car wasn't the most competitive at the time. So he showed very good results, and maybe one day would have become a world champion, as he have predicted himself. Even though, for example, his Sterling Moss manager, Rob Walker, and we will see this name again today, mentioned that Collins is driving much too aggressively, which he should change, because if he would not change this, he would die on the track, which unfortunately happened soon later in an accident at the German Nürburgring, where he had the crash as he was chasing the one wall from Tony Brock's Nürburgring, also known as the Green Hell. a very dangerous racetrack. And again, tragically, ironically, this accident reminded many spectators to the one where Luigi Musso died.
Yeah, that's right. And when we discussed Michael Hawthorn, we were saying that he was really affected by the death of Peter Collins, because they were very great friends and teammates for a long time. And like Patrick said, there was even this kind of back and forth with hiring and firing Peter Collins. So he himself was made the decision to retire after Peter's death, and he retired at the end of the season. Well, he retired a champion because he became a champion that year, and so that was a very that was kind of the end of the Formula One career for Michael Hawthorn.
Yes, and you may align also that it said that Hawthorn had quite a strong illness, and due to this illness, had to leave Formula One anyway, and maybe this also has caused his fatal accident very shortly after. And with this, we are already with Mike Hawthorn, British blonde hero at that time, very talented from a rich background, victories also in Le Mans. He started also early in Formula One at Cooper, and in 1953 he switched to Ferrari. And he was the first British in the team with the 500, then the 550, then back to the British team with Vanwall, then Maserati, and then since 57 Lancia Ferrari D50, and then 1958 he won the championship with the Ferrari 246, as you see here on the photo. As we mentioned, he died in an accident, not on a racetrack, but it seems he had something like a private race on the streets against Rob Walker, the Rob Walker we just already mentioned, the one who was criticizing Peter Collins. So it seems that he and Rob Walker had a small race on British streets. Rob Walker with a Mercedes and Hawthorn with a Jaguar. And for unknown reason, the Jaguar collided with a Bedford, maybe because because of the situation that there have been an illegal street race, or also maybe he lost consciousness before due to his sickness. There are different speculations.
Yeah, so he had kidney, basically
Yes.
kidney problems. And he so there is a lot of, when we talked about Michael Hawthorn with Patrick in a special episode, and I encourage you to find that episode. We told you that there is a lot of speculation around Michael Hawthorn's death, and again, I'm sorry to bring up the potential suicide, but there were speculations about potentially that he deliberately kind of instigated that street race to sort of die in an accident. There is no evidence that that's correct. It's still treated as an accident, but a fact is a fact. So we lost kind of subsequently 3 prominent Ferrari drivers in a very close sort of sequence of events.
Yeah, exactly. Just to add, because many say that his kidney problems had been fatal, so he knew that he potentially knew that he would die, and maybe he, as a racing driver, he preferred to die in an accident instead in the bed, or maybe he didn't want directly commit suicide, but he didn't care if he would die, to say it that way. And also to mention here, it seems, at least Rob Walker said it in a later interview at the end of the 80s, that a British police officer advised him not to tell them that this was some kind of a street race, and due to this, there was never an investigation against Rob Walker at this time. So we spoke about the three drivers. Somebody we have to mention here also is Fiamma Bresci, who was Luigi Musso's girlfriend at that time, and the one who later in different interviews complained about the situation, speaking about the debts and about the toxic atmosphere inside the dream. Up to that, she mentioned that Enzo Ferrari himself did not do anything against this toxic atmosphere, even that it was good for him because it supported the rivalry, and maybe that each driver drives at the limit. She did not say that Enzo Ferrari actively was creating the toxic atmosphere. She just said that he wasn't doing anything against it. This to underline.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I just also want to say that, well, Fiamma Bresci, I mean, many of us know her as the first lady of Formula One, because Enzo Ferrari later in his life kind of became quite close with her, and there were even rumors that they had an affair, but Fiamma Bresci herself completely denied those rumors, so it was more of like a platonic kind of relationship. But yes, so she influenced quite a lot of decision making in Ferrari later in Enzo Ferrari's life, with, for example, with the car colors. So we will talk about that. But yeah, so I just also wanted to say that the death of Luigi Musso really affected her, and she wrote later that she also tried to commit suicide the day when Luigi Musso died. And basically she was trying to jump out of the window and was stopped by a friend. And yeah, so, and kind of that whole episode also really made her very close with Enzo Ferrari, because it kind of was really emotional. So as you know, Enzo Ferrari himself was very emotionally reliving all the tragic experiences that he had with, especially with, Italian drivers that died in action in Ferrari cars. I mean, he like really understood that emotion, and yeah, that's why they became close. So they became friends, and then she was quite an important figure in Ferrari. So she worked for Enzo Ferrari for several years, and yeah, really was a big influencer on his decision making later in life.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see directly some of her words, how she described the situation related to the accidents in 1958. I hated them both. First, because I was aware of certain facts that were not right, and also because when I came out of the hospital and went back to the hotel, I found them in the square outside the hotel laughing and playing a game of football with an empty beer can. So when they died too, it was liberating for me. Otherwise, I would have had unpleasant feelings towards them forever. This way, I could find a sense of peace.
Yeah.
Okay, I think quite understandable her way of thinking here.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this is what I was referring to. So she really liked bright colors, and if you Google her name, you will find a lot of photos of her with Enzo Ferrari. Kind of as like all color photos, and normally she's wearing something bright. She's not quite wearing yellow in any of the pictures, I have to say, but she's like, these are very bright colors, but she did like bright colors and she did like yellow. And that's why we know that there are some iconic designs that Ferrari made later on that were yellow, because previously Enzo Ferrari only produced red cars. So it was almost like Ford only made black cars. So there was some, so he kind of embraced other possibilities with color of
Yeah.
Ferrari cars.
Yeah, and I think she was quite important for the company, as Enzo Ferrari's request was towards her to get also a little bit more the female opinion about this car. I mean, back in 1950s and maybe still today, the main ownership of Ferraris are these male drivers, male customers. Nevertheless, for the male, be able to buy the car, you need, in many cases, the okay of your wife, spouse, girlfriend, whatever. So very important that not only the one who signs the contract likes the car, but also potential family members, so the spouses. So having a female opinion about the car make them more appealing. Also for female customers had been very important for the Ferrari company. Okay, practically at the end. So at last, some far-fetched theory of mine. There is an interesting short movie called Toby Dammit, done by Federico Fellini. And here a British Shakespeare actor went to Italy to play in a movie. And this British actor has a big alcoholic problem, loses his mind various times. It's a quite surreal movie. So practically one of the few things he always remembers that the movie producers promised him to get a latest model Ferrari, something which he repeats various times in this 45 minutes movie. Also, in the movie, you see where he get interviewed by the press. First asked if he believes in God, and he said he not. But after this, the question if he believes in the devil, and he confirmed, but not in a classic Catholic view, but he described the devil like a young blonde girl. By the way, Tommy Dammit is based on a book by the U.S. author. I forgot the name. Famous for horror movies, horror books. They like The Raven. Yeah. Anyway, so Fellini changed it that the devil is a young blonde girl. So in this movie, you see this relation between Ferrari, between Tamen. You see him driving the Ferrari, and also showing a young blonde girl like Fiamma Bresci. So maybe you say similar like the Bobby Deerfield movie, that this somehow have been inspired by the happenings in the year 1957, the Mille Miglia, and also the tragedy of Hawthorn, Collins and Hawthorn, where we had the blonde Fiamma Bresci. So this just as an interesting questions for you. I put a link in the notice so you can see the whole article. And maybe if you like, I would invite you to see this 45 short surreal horror movie. And now I think last but not least, the Ferrari movie is a biopic. It's quite close to reality. Some details have been changed, some years but besides this, it's, I think, quite accurate. So we get a good idea who Enzo Ferrari was, maybe even a better who his wife Laura had been. If you are more interesting about Enzo Ferrari, I created an Enzo Ferrari chatbot. I programmed it a little bit with Enzo's biography. So, and I will put the direct link also here in the notice, the description of the episode. So going there, you are able to speak with Enzo Ferrari and ask him all the questions you always wanted to ask him.
Yeah, brilliant. And when we had Enzo Ferrari episode, Patrick demonstrated the tool, so which was also very cool. So yeah.
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 The Enzo Ferrari episode, if I'm correct, we did more than 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So this was technically something different. This is now a chatbot working similar to, this is a generative AI
Right. Yeah.
chatbot now. So
A new
similar
version.
to different technology. So same as with ChatGPT, it gives some answers as Enzo Ferrari maybe would have done. But please take care, it's a generative AI, so it tends to hallucinate a little bit.
Brilliant. On that happy note, thank you very much for watching. And just to remind you that we are in video format on YouTube and Spotify, and we are in voice format on many other platforms. Again, thanks to Patrick. And thank you so much for being with us. We're always interested in your opinion. We don't think that we know it all, so please leave your comments. And if you think we've missed something and maybe misinterpreted something, or maybe forgot about some facts that you want us to think about, please do leave a comment, and that's always appreciated and motivates us to do future episodes. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.